So welcome to episode 2 of Inside the Comedy Institute. I'm Greg Romero Wilson, founder and host of this show. And today I'm very pleased to have with us someone that I think is just a brilliant comedian and someone that, every time he works on something new, there's a television or stand-up project, it's always fantastic. It's always entertaining and just lightning fast wit, the kind of thing that when you watch it, you want it. And so here he's the host of Idiot Test, which I think did like 200 episodes, 300 episodes, something like that?
210, baby.
210. That's a lot of television time. A regular panelist on At Midnight and Chelsea Lately. And of course, your 1 hour special Neurotic Gangster, which originally that came out, I think, on Showtime. Was it Showtime originally?
That's
it. But now they can see it on YouTube. Is that right?
YouTube for free in 5 parts, or Amazon Prime if you don't like things broken up into nuggets.
There you go. That's right. It's on Amazon Prime now as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, happy to have him here, Mr. Ben Gleib, everybody. Ben Gleib! All right.
Thank you, brother. So good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Listen, let's jump right into it. Now, when I think of Ben Gleib, and I feel like a lot of people share this, when I think of Ben Gleib, I think of a Crowdwork specialist. Someone that, and I feel most comedians are kind of specialists. There is one thing that we enjoy doing more than anything else, whether it's storytelling, short form jokes, observational, personal, crowd work, riffing, whatever. And I'm a crowd work guy myself. I don't know if people consider me a specialist, but I love doing I do whole crowd work shows as well. And I love watching you do it. Would you consider yourself a crowd work specialist, or what kind of comedian do you think you are?
I would. I mean, I think for people that do a lot of crowd work, it's eternally the struggle. Comics always want to be known for the thing that they aren't known for. So I would consider myself that, but then I'm always like, but damn it, my material is also very unique, and no one says what I said, and it kills also. But it is true. When I do crowd work, it goes to that next level, and that is what my most unique skill set is. And, I was the first comic ever to do a full headline set on Facebook Live, and I did it for 8 straight cities. On my tour in 2016, almost 4 million people saw it. I did it in my Showtime special. I made sure they kept in 8 minutes of crowd work in my hour special. So I definitely do think that's what I do. And now I do a weekly show online at Nowhere Comedy Club that is all crowd work and improv, called Gleib Off the Top, Crowd Work and Improvised Madness, every single week. So
sometimes you do it solo, but sometimes you bring in a little help.
That's correct. Yeah, I've had some great special guests start joining me, like Jamie Kennedy, who's one of the improv greats, Adam Ray, Carlisle Forrester, Leah Lamar, Ben Morrison, Mary Lynn Rice Cub's doing it soon. Nikki Glazer's has been a special guest for me on that show. And I'm even supposedly soon Tiffany Haddish is going to join. So it's been a lot of fun, and we just go crazy. We've created a whole community. We have a town called the Town of Mad Ones that are part of the Improvised Madness show. We elect a new mayor each week. I smoke a little weed, and then shit goes off the walls. And I'll do like record long Zoom stand-up shows. Some of these shows, even when it's just me solo, are like 2+ hours of me on stage, which is pretty nuts for a medium where most people don't want to even do a 10-minute set.
I agree. Most people have shied away from it, and you have fully and completely embraced it, creating the Nowhere Comedy Club, as well as your social distance social hour show.
Social Distancing Social Club today, in fact, is our 200th episode. I'm taping right after this.
It's so funny because I've actually, the social club, I don't know much about it. I just know that you do it, but I've seen people wearing the t-shirts.
That's awesome.
Out around Los Angeles, 2 different times. I've been like, oh my God, the social club. I'm like, it's really out there. So it's amazing work. Now let's start at the beginning. Obviously, you didn't just start here at this level, being able to do 2 hours of crowd work unbridled. There was, that you started out like everybody does, wondering, can I do this? Should I do this? So let's go back in time. And if you hadn't gone into comedy, what was the career path going to be for Ben Gleib? And at that point, it wasn't even Ben Gleib, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Yeah. My legal name is Ben Gleiberman.
Right.
And for the first few years as a comic, I was Ben Gleiberman. Even my first national television spot on the Late Late Show with Craig Kilborn, a week after my 25th birthday, he introduced me, ladies and gentlemen, Ben Gleiberman.
So you started out as, so what were you planning to do before you were like, I'm going to be a comedian?
I didn't really have another plan ever since I was a kid, since literally about 7 years old or so. I wanted to be a comedian, talk show host, entertainer, and actor and all those things. And I just focused my life towards that goal. I didn't really have any legit other plan.
Did you go to college?
I did, yeah. I graduated from UC San Diego, where I did my own late night talk show for 4 years, the Gleib Show, and another weekly show called the Whatever Live Show, a call-in show where I honed a lot of my improv chops for 4 years every week. The Gleib Show became...
What did you get an actual degree in?
My degree... So the Gleib Show became like a pretty big thing at UCSD. It was like this... And it was this very popular show. I became like the most famous person in the microcosm of my college. So my degree was in communications. I was in the communications department, theater minor, communications major, and I actually was in the honors thesis program, and my honors thesis was about my talk show that I had in college. And so I had to write a paper at the end called the Gleib Show, Taking a Real Life Dream to the Reality of Hollywood. And the whole premise, so it matches well with your podcast, was exactly how do I take this dream and try to make it happen in reality in the whole world instead of just in the small, microcosm of a college campus. And I even had a class that was my show. I had a bunch of my friends my last 2 years of college getting 4 units each to work on my talk show.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So in college, like my last 2 years, I had a personal assistant, a physical trainer. I had writers.
You had it better than you have now.
Oh yeah, much better. I've still not replaced
you had a full
that
staff.
level.
You've never been able to get back to that level that you had in college. Well, that's great. That's so funny because I say that comedy, the people that really get there are lifers. There are people that there is no backup plan. There is no second act. And that's not to say that you don't finish your degree and have a job. I also say you do want to have a job while you're coming up, until you make that money, until you start. Yeah, exactly. So what were some of those jobs? What did you go through before the comedy really paid the bills?
The first thing that I did when I graduated college, I got a job as a motivational speaker for high school students. I was always trying to find things that would just sharpen my skills as
right. That allowed you to use your talking and everything. That wasn't actual work.
Big time. And I had a big speech problem growing up from age like 3 or 4. On and off, it would come and go, but a stutter and a disfluency, very severe, that would even last me through age 22, on and off. Even through my college talk show, I had to struggle with it a lot. It even came back once on an episode of Chelsea Lately, but I just wanted to do this so much in my soul that I had to battle through it. And so being able to get a job as a motivational speaker, I was able to just practice speaking for an hour at a time, keeping an audience wrapped to your words, learning how to make them laugh on cue, how to make them applaud at the right moments. And so I did that, teaching this program for monster.com. And at the same time, I started a company with my best friend, Jason Nazar, who's now a very successful tech CEO, but he had studied stage hypnosis. And so we created a show called Stand Up and Sleep. And at the time I was an impressionist comedian. And so that's how I started. And so I did 30 minutes of, like, early, before I even really did legit stand-up, I was doing 30 minutes of impressions, little like live sketches I created, opening for my tech CEO hypnotist friend who did a stage show. And it was called Stand Up and Sleep. It was so much fun. And
let me ask you this. Okay, yeah. What was your go-to impression at that time? And can we see a little taste? Can we get a little taste?
Sure. Casey Kasem was a big one for me.
I can see that. That's a good vocal match for you.
Yeah, it was always, that was one of the first jokes I did where I was able to consistently start getting laughs at the beginning of my set. You just need that first pop. When you get them to laugh at the beginning of a set,
absolutely.
Then they trust you, and then you can do whatever. So I started often with this line. One of my first joke lines, I would go, I'm Casey Kasem. This song hit the charts at number 1 and moved down 8 notches to number 1. I said number 1 twice. It's Tupac Shakur with fake-ass bitches.
Can I tell you, one of the things that I try and press upon comics that I work with is to open with a punchline. Get to that punchline as fast as possible. People like to, there's some, this idea that went around. It's like, you have to get that first laugh in the first 30 seconds. I'm like, 30 seconds, you're 30 seconds too late. You need to get that. The sooner you get it, if you can open with a punch, the sooner they trust you, the sooner they believe, oh, okay, this guy's funny.
I do agree.
So I'm always trying to get to that first punchline as fast as possible.
I do agree, generally speaking, but it depends how much confidence you got and how well you can stay in the pocket. Because as long as you stay in the pocket, you can. Because after that joke, I then wrote a joke shortly after that I very lazily or out of fear used as my opener for many years. I'm sure you remember this joke of mine, the homeless guy joke. Ended up opening or using it early in my special too. I used it for far too long, but it's like a 40-second build-up to one big bait and switch punchline, and it's not recommended. You're right, but if you can stay in that pocket and then hit them hard with a bait and switch that just makes them lose their shit, it's worth it. And I even on my Kilborn set on the Late Late Show, I opened with that, and I almost forgot the key piece of setup that makes the whole joke work.
Makes the whole thing work.
Oh, God. I had to go back and put it back in.
Right, and that's weird. When you have to double back, and then you're quickly just trying to smooth it over in the moment.
Yes.
But see, that's the thing is, what you have there, though, is you identified it as being a 99%er joke. This joke hits 99% of the time. So that created the confidence to allow that opportunity to build.
Yeah, I knew it does hit. Right.
Right. And that's the thing, that you have to have a joke with that kind of confidence to do that, but but again, I'm talking about people that are developing, and it's hard to have that kind of confidence when you're first developing your style and your voice and your confidence, and a 40-second bit that's a 99%er.
Yes.
Not everybody's going to develop that way. And you kind of stumbled across, it sounds like, the opening punchline right off the bat as a safety measure. And that's what I think it is. And it's great for developing comics. I think it's invaluable to have that, because then you can relax. And then, like you were saying, you would do that and then go into the 40-second piece, because you'd gotten that laugh, gotten that trust, it sounds like. And once you were comfortable, they were comfortable, you had the freedom to do that.
Yes. And then I got to the place where I could just drop to that short opener, and I just used that 40-second buildup as literally my opener. But that was, when I just, like I said, had the confidence to pull that off. And I just did it that way. But I remember during that Late Late Show set, it was a crazy moment, I'll never forget it, was when I messed up that line. I skipped that line and then doubled back. During the rest of that joke, I still had another 15 seconds till I hit the bait and switch punchline. And I remember this thought, sometimes as a comic, you have dual tracks of thinking when you're performing. You can focus on your jokes, and you can also be thinking about shit.
Yeah.
You can be thinking about your life, your career, that cute girl in the audience. You can think about different shit while you're telling your jokes. And I remember I had this thought that was, okay, Ben, your career is going to go one of two ways right now. Either you bear down and you focus and you crush the rest of the set and don't fuck anything else up, or you're not going to be long for this game. And then I just bear down and I crushed the rest of that set, got 5 applause breaks, standing O at the end of my first TV set. And I'm like, okay, I'm good. Whew.
Wow. Crisis averted. I would have loved to have heard the bells going off in your head at that moment. Woo, focus. You missed that point. You got to double back. Make it a smooth transition. Make it seem like that part goes here. So you got to kind of restate it, blah, blah, blah. And these are the quick thoughts that go through your mind, because sometimes that happened to me one time in a comedy contest doing clean material. And it was when I was very new with my clean material, because I was such a filthy club comic for so long without developing that. It was that, even though I've been doing stand-up for about 10 years, the clean stuff was still first generation for me. And I blew the first punchline right out of the gate. I said it in reverse, which just completely made no sense, really, for what I was saying. And I was like, and that was it. I was off my horse. And to be honest, in that particular moment, I didn't fully recover, because I just didn't. And the material wasn't that great anyway. I really put it on that more than it was first generation clean material. I had no business taking it out there. I was just so eager to work in that space at that point.
Oh, which by the way, before you move on to your next question, as just the always needing to show the full cavalcade. I don't know if Casey Kasem for young people that are comedy audiences is the best example. Some of my early impressions were also like Jack Nicholson, Christopher Walken,
The
people
classics.
like that, like the classics.
Yeah. All right. Well, give us a little walk-in. Just dazzle us with a little walk-in. Do you want to use the filter for this?
Oh, sure, I can. Sure.
Let's do that. This is when he turned on the Zoom before this interview. This is how he turned on the Zoom.
So what, Greg? Listen. Sometimes I wake up late and don't put my face on. It's carefully unpacking your life and career. It's not easy to do. No one can. No one knows. Well, I think you should. I think you should just sit the fuck down and listen up, 'cause I've lived and I have a career. I'm gonna share my goddamn wisdom.
Can I tell you, most people don't realize how many comics started out in the impressionist vein. A lot of guys, Jim Carrey was a big impressionist.
Oh, yeah. And that's why I stopped doing it. I was doing all impressions, and I was watching one night the Jim Carrey E! True Hollywood Story when I was, 23 years old, and I was killing with this impression thing, and literally the voiceover on E! True Hollywood Story shows B-roll of Carrey getting a standing O at the Comedy Store doing impressions, doing his like Peter Fonda face and his like, and he goes, the voiceover goes, Carrey was getting standing ovations to sold out crowds at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles, but he saw his career heading one place, and it pans to the Sands marquee on the Vegas Strip, and he goes, not wanting to be a cocktail lounge Vegas act, he abandoned his entire impression-laden act and bombed for the next 2 years until he found his truly unique voice. And that's what I did too.
Wow, and that hit you hard.
It hit me hard. I'm like, I don't want that either. I want a legit mainstream career by impressions. And I did not do impressions again in my act for the next like 15 years. I've only recently started bringing them back because I feel like I'm established enough now that it can be something fun that I pepper into what I do.
Right, exactly. It's just
like,
a fun little side thing. Right, exactly. It's a little side thing you could throw in. It's not something that people are coming to see the impressionists. And I often say that. That's one of the things I talk about. I'm not against, we call it gimmick comedy, obviously, because you have a special gimmick there, like whether it's ventriloquism or doing impressions or playing a guitar. I'm not against that. But you have to remember that if that's what you become known for, that's what people are going to expect. It's weird watching Jeff Dunham try and get away from the puppets. And you could see the audience just sitting there while he's trying to do regular stand-up for 15 minutes or so. They're just sitting there like, yeah, okay, make with the jalapeno on a stick.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I remember I saw at the Cellar many, many years ago, Daryl Hammond pop on stage. And he looked like he was in prison. He was trying to do jokes, and you could just tell the crowd wanted the voices. And at the end,
they wanted the impressions. If you become exactly, I mean, and the same is true. If you remember, in the '80s, character comedy took over, where people were just fully characters. I'm talking about Bobcat Goldthwait, Judy Tenuta, Pee Wee Herman, guys like this. And they get locked into this character to where nobody wants the real you. You show up and they're like, no, do the character that we saw on TV that we're used to. That's what we want. It can be
paid money for.
Exactly. So it can be, I hate to see it, even the Weasel to a great extent, as wildly as successful as he was with this. We've watched him in person. We know this guy, and he's struggled. Pauly Shore's struggled to not necessarily be the Weasel that everyone expects him to be when he shows up.
People want to see him squeeze that ooze.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing.
And so it can be a slippery slope. So that's amazing. And that's why shows like this are important for developing comedians, because they hear lessons like this. And it does, like I said, it smacked you in the face. You were succeeding with it. And you were like, oh my God, I'm on that path too. I also need to pull the ripcord on this. That's pretty amazing stuff right there.
And then I was able to like start bringing those impressions out, like on my game show, on Idiot Test. As the like, there was season 1, there was a guy that did impressions. I'm like, let's battle. And then I'm doing an impression battle all episode with this guy that does impressions while I'm hosting my own, you know, cable network game show. That's the #1 show on the network, and I felt confident. Like, now I could be real free. I could do whatever the hell I want. I got a show.
Yeah. And when did you discover Crowdwork? When did it connect for you and you were like, and it turned you on? Clearly the switch went on and you were like, oh my God, this is better than even material that works. This is electric. And I believe me, I'm a Crowdwork guy. I love it's sometimes hard when you open up with Crowdwork and it goes so well, and then you try and downshift into material.
That's hard.
And the energy is just different.
Yes.
You know, because the meter is different. The energy and it can sometimes you got to be like, oh fuck the material. I got to do all Crowdwork because the energy is too good. When did you discover that? How did you discover it? And was it easy for you was it a natural transition or a deliberate transition?
It was pretty natural. I just couldn't help it. You know, like even in my I found an audio cassette recently of my first time ever doing stand-up at an open mic, and I tried a little bit of crowd work that did not go well. So then I went back to material for a while, but very early, like a year or 2 in, I just started talking to the crowd, and I was able to get laughs most of the time, not as, you know, consistently as I do now, but I was able to get laughs. And so I just loved it so much. You know, I refer to it as the comedy high wire. It's the ultimate high wire because we have all of our tricks and our jokes that we know, like you said, that 99.9% are going to work. So there's no real risk to your good jokes. Right,
there's no risk, and that's where the excitement factor is. I think it's very different.
Yes, there's huge risk to comedy, and I don't know what I'm going to say, so it's also funny to me. It's more entertaining.
Totally.
To me.
Yes, that's the best part. When you're making yourself laugh, you're like, oh, that was fun, right?
You're like, I can't believe I thought of that shit. That's incredible.
And you know, it's so funny the way it stokes jealousy in other comics when they see it working, because then it can turn the whole show into constant crowd work.
Yeah.
You know, then everybody wants to do the crowd work because they want to have as much fun as you were having.
For sure. But, you know, it's been a real blessing and a curse because it's led to a ton of work. It led to some of my biggest breaks as people knew I was good at improv, but I resented it for a long time because I couldn't get the shows. I wasn't being booked to do sets on late night generally. I still
because they look at you and they're like, but he does crowd work. How can we put that on TV?
I couldn't even get Comics Unleashed for a million years, and they had everybody. I ended up doing it. But they literally said, oh, he's good at crowd work, but does he have material? And I had over 2.5 hours of material, but they don't know it. They don't see it. The industry is very stupid and lazy, and a lot of the executives don't go into the rooms. A lot of the representatives don't go into the showrooms. They maybe go to the bar occasionally and drink and don't know stand-up, and they're only heat seekers, and they only go off what they hear about who you are and what you are. So that's why branding and staying focused on what you do best is so important, because often that's all that they will ever know about you. Because once again, let me emphasize it, the industry is a bunch of lazy fucking idiots most of the time that does not try to find talent. They try to follow talent because that's safer for them. If they hire someone that's already anointed as the next it person, well, everybody's excited they got them. You don't have to put your neck on the line and say, trust me, this guy's good. I know he's not seen anywhere yet or he hasn't had his break, but he's great. I've always tried to do that.
Seems like that era of them going and watching and being and really being a part of the community and watching guys develop and say, and maybe even giving it like, listen, if you could develop more like that and stuff like that, it seems like that kind of interwoven thing is gone. And it is, especially with social media, and they're just looking for 1 million followers or whatever. I love the way you put it. They're heat seekers. You know, you get a pop, all of a sudden everybody wants in on it. I often say they all want to be the second person in the pool. Nobody wants to be the first person in your pool. 100%. Everybody wants to be second.
100%. And that's 100% true. And the problem is they end up having most of your pool party with no one in the water.
Yeah.
And so there's that. And then secondly, where I say it's a blessing and a curse. Like I remember there was a couple times at the Laugh Factory in the early days of Gleib's College Comedy, which became College Night, which became Comedy Juice that I created.
That's right. That's right. I remember that.
Yeah, man. Those early days, I had like some industry person come out to check me out, and everybody else on the show. And I would host the show, and I opened one day with Crowdwork, with like 4 minutes of Crowdwork. She wanted to see my material, and I just couldn't help it. I was undisciplined. I still am.
I'm
And
with you.
and it was not my best example of crowd work. I kind of struggled for a minute or two, and I got laughs from it, but it wasn't great. And I came off stage, and you could just see she was like, she was like, "Why'd you do that? Why didn't you?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm stupid, I guess."
Well, because you were hosting, and when you're showcasing, the host position is not the position to showcase from.
No,
But these are the things you learn over the course of a career. We make mistakes. I don't think there's anyone that's ever gotten everything right along their journey. You know, I mean, the journey is made of mistakes, don't you think?
It is. It is. And you have to just know that as long as the trajectory is heading upward, as long as your graph, even if it's like this, as long as it's, kind of still heading up, it was off frame for the good part, but as long as it's still heading up, then you know you're good. You're going to have a lot of peaks and valleys, but as long as you're doing the same or better each year, or at least each 2 years, you're fine.
Yeah.
If your graph's like this and you're just like, you had one break and then it's been 2 years and nothing else is coming and you're not good, you might want to reevaluate this career. But as long as you're finding work consistently and you're maintaining at a place you're happy with or growing, then you're all good.
Now, let me ask you this. One of my favorite descriptions of the developmental process before you start getting breaks was described by Steve Martin as the war years.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when you're really in the trenches, slugging it out, writing that material, developing your style, developing your voices. Tell us about your war years. What do you remember as being, and in particular, I like to say the lowest lows and the highest highs of those years, because that's really the meat of the journey. When it begins to work and you begin to make money, I mean, that's the reward, but the meat of the journey is the war years. What were your war years like? What do you remember the most?
Wow. Interesting. That's really interesting, because I was thinking about overall career highs and lows, and I wasn't.
But you could tell us that too. If you want to just tell us career highs and lows, we could go through those too.
No, I can. No, whatever you want. I can. I think it's really a more interesting question. I remember, some of the great moments and some of the bad moments. I remember that showcase when I came off stage and the woman was like, shook her head at me. I remember
that's got to be devastating for a young comedian, because you're building towards these opportunities, and they're so validating when you're a young comedian, and to whiff is got to be a heartbreaker. What did it feel like the rest of that night? Because I know your mind, and you stay up all night sometimes thinking anyway.
Yeah.
What was that night like for you?
I'm a pretty positive person, so it wasn't that bad. I just was disappointed in myself, but then I still had a shitload of fun the rest of the night. And I'm someone who I'm a real forward trajectory person. I feel like energy and talent and perseverance will carry you through. So I was fine. I was just like a little annoyed. I probably went back to my parents' garage and told them I stupidly did crowd work at the beginning. And my mom was like, "It's okay, Benny, it'll be fine." I was still living in my parents' garage. And I was like, yeah, it's cool. And I got up and did my own thing the next day. It wasn't that bad. But then I remember I showcased one time for Pat Buckles, who's now a buddy, but for a late night show once, and I did not do well. And she gave me some feedback after. It was at Mixed Nuts, which became the Comedy Union.
Okay, right, yeah.
And I didn't do well. It was an urban crowd, and I didn't really know how to play the room, and I didn't read it right, and I did not do well, and that felt pretty bad. And she gave me feedback, and she's like, "This joke sounds derivative, and this thing is this." Or I remember another low was I showcased one time for Jimmy Kimmel Live, and the booker at the time just wasn't a fan of mine, and I had a good set. I had a really good set in the showcase. I thought I was going to get it. I did really well, I thought. And I came off stage, and I talked to the guy afterwards, and he goes, "Okay," and this clearly wasn't saying anything nice about the set. And I told him, "Oh, I just did this hour-long online show at something." And he looks at me and he goes, "Yeah, maybe longer form is more your medium." And I was like, "Ooh, wow."
Ooh.
Says the guy who's in charge of the short form 5-minute sets. Thanks a lot.
Right.
Thanks a lot, Dick.
I once was told by the booker for Letterman that my routine was perfect. It was so perfect. And I was like, "So would it be, so what about Letterman? He goes, oh, Letterman wouldn't like it.
I have a story about him too. Eddie Brill, right?
Yes, Eddie Brill.
Who I love, and he's a friend these days too. But back then, he was just the gatekeeper of Late Show
Of Letterman. Yep.
And I was performing at the at the Vancouver Comedy Festival. This is like,
okay.
I don't even know when, like 2004, 2005, something like that. 2006 maybe. And so I had a 9-minute set on this show at Yuck Yucks, and Brill was there, and I told him I'm going to be doing 2 clean back-to-back TV sets for you to see for a Letterman submission. He's like, great, I'm going to go watch you. And I go on stage, and I crush these 2 sets. Crush. I mean, this audience is fucking rolling. And Eddie Brill comes backstage afterwards and says, let's talk. And we go talk there in the backstage area. And first thing he says to me is, Ben, that was amazing. You're very good at what you do. Let me explain to you in detail why you're a year or 2 away from Letterman.
Oh, okay.
So he had just it was some hope, but he just let me down that I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Marc Maron missed that sentence. And then here's Eddie Brill go on to compliment stuff in my set for the next 2 minutes, and all Maron hears, bitter, back in his worst bitter days, Marc Maron hears, and this joke was great, and Maron is sure I've booked Letterman.
Right.
But he's like,
this young fuck is gonna get Letterman. God damn it.
And so he doesn't know I'm in my doldrum now. I'm literally listening to a guy lecture me about how I'm not ready for the biggest goal in my life. And I'm going through turmoil already. And Marc Maron, one of the greats, gets in between me and Eddie, gets in my face this close, 1 inch, noses 1 inch apart, right in my face. And he goes, you little young punk, huh? You think you're so cute and clever with your little jokes about candy bars and candy bar slogans, huh? That's what it takes now? That's how it is? That's what you're gonna do now? In my face, like he wanted to knock me the fuck out.
Wow.
And I wanted to say, Marc, I just didn't get Letterman. Can you back the fuck out of my face? But instead I was like, okay, thanks, Marc. Hi. What a weird business. So that was a low. That was a fucking low.
That's a career low right there. That's pretty
Probably
bad.
got drunk that night. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. You're like, I just got
alcohol.
turned down and I got yelled at by somebody I previously really liked.
Yeah. And he still won't have me on my podcast, and I'm still pissed about it. And I told him backstage at Chelsea lately once how he did that to me, and he was like barely apologetic, and also called me annoying once. That was a low. I mean, that's not the war years, but it's all the war years is what I think.
That's true. It is always still a bit of, but you have better ammunition later in your career than you do.
That's true. But I want to make clear though, I don't, just to anybody aspiring to do this, correct me if you think I'm wrong, Greg, but I don't think you will. It's always the warriors. Yes, there are times where you're more on top and you have an advantage in the war and you can advance your troops forward, but it's still a fucking battle to get every inch. It is still, that's why one of my favorite things in life, if you ever heard Feeling Low, one of the best inspirational videos you'll ever see, YouTube, Al Pacino Inch's speech from Any Given Sunday. That halftime speech is one of the most motivational things you'll ever hear, because he's like, the people who succeed are the ones who are willing to grab every inch with their fingernails. That's what life is. You have to inch by inch climb, because no one gives you shit. So, yeah, you can be in better positions, but still, it's like that line from the old intro of MTV's Diary. Every day there is a battle. Every day there is. You gotta always climb, and it ain't easy out there. And so, even, I was on Chelsea lately for 7 years. I did 100 episodes of that show. And still, I had some of the lowest lows after an episode where I feel like I bombed a couple jokes and then I wasn't on for 2 months instead of every month that I thought I did well. Or Chelsea didn't text me afterwards and say good job. Or Marc Maron was on, he kind of stepped on my jokes. Or Or I got into a fight with Lonnie Love one time on air, and I'm like, is this going to jeopardize my position on this show? Or, you know, um, I'd be on Chelsea lately and feeling like I'm a TV star kind of, and I'm on a hit show, and I go on the road and making not much money for 4 days work that you promote for months and months leading up to it, and
Yeah.
people think, oh, you're getting paid so much for such a short amount of time. Yeah, because you need those paydays to pay your bills for the month you're promoting and working every day and developing and doing free sets in LA and all that shit. And you go on the road, and even though you're on TV, you don't sell shit. You sell basically maybe 5 tickets above their normal, and the club owner's like, I don't know, man, I don't know if this is good, and try to sell more tomorrow. And then for your Sunday show, you got 20 people there, and they don't necessarily bring you back the next year, or if they do, it's for a reduced rate, or
Hmm.
it's always a challenge, it's always a struggle, and that's just part of the game. You just have to make it through and be willing to take lots of hard knocks. There was a joke, actually, I think, I don't know if it wasn't in that first late show set, but it was right after I would do it a lot, that I think explained really what, like, especially early comedy, but really all the way through is, because we still take gigs for $50 all the time, even though you've been a star of network television shows. You still take $50 gigs. You're like, hell yeah, I'll take $50 to tell jokes and get to hone my craft and pay it some little bit of my groceries. Fuck yeah, we aren't rich. You
Yeah.
think you're gonna be rich growing up when you're on TV, and it's just the biggest lie in the world. Until you become one of the household names, you don't make shit.
It's true.
So one of
It's
my early
true.
jokes was about the after the late show. I go, the joke was, I was recently on the late show, and so I got paid $1,000 for that one performance. $1,000. So if you divide that over the year, that's about $50 a week. Not bad, not bad.
Not bad.
Because that might be your only payday for a fucking year. Your only real payday when you're coming up.
Oh my God. And people don't realize that. And you really think, and that's the thing. Because people get their a television break every year. 100 new comics get a and when you're before you have the big television appearance, you think that okay, your life is up to that, and then your life is totally different after that, and you get booked at every club, and every show is sold out, and you make a ton of money, and that's just not how it really lines up.
No, even in Steve Martin's book, Born Standing Up, one of the great books about this process, even then, before the million channel bifurcated long tail market where there's 1,000 options, even then, when Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show was the kingmaker, and they said, you go on, do a set on The Tonight Show, you're an overnight success. In the book, Steve Martin says, that's a lie. After the first time, no one notices, no one cares. After the third time, maybe some people at the market are like, do I know you in my personal life? After the 9th time you do the Tonight Show and Johnny invites you to the couch, then people start to learn your name. And that was then. So imagine
That was
now.
then, right, when he had a share of like 50, 60 million people a night.
Yes, exactly right. So, the high highs from early on, from those early, rough warriors, are little things. It's your first guest, Adam Hunter, asking me to go and co-headline with him. Little shitty gigs on the road were the first times I was co-headlining fucking anything, and he would go last. It was his gigs, of course, but it was so kind of him. A lot of my first breaks came from Adam. So kind of him to recognize, I guess, that I had the level of talent where, like, he wanted to, like, respect me enough and not ask me to feature, but offer me the title of co-headlining. We would do the same amount of time, and I would go and play little bars, little casinos out in the middle of nowhere. Adam's car breaks down on the way back, immediately takes his shirt off and is spinning it around the side of the road, trying to, I don't know, get lesbian hitchhikers to pick us up. I don't know what his goal was. It just scared people off mostly, and no one stopped. But he's got a good body, and he flaunts it. But he gave me a lot of those breaks. It was when Adam Hunter said to me, you're always welcome on this stage at the Westwood Brewing Company, this little attic workout room that you, of course, know well as well, that built my material and built my career. To have an open invite to pop into a room where you could develop material was one of the highest highs in the world. And that's the room that
Right.
built so many of the people. Whitney Cummings used to play it all the time. And everybody that became big would be in that little room with between 4 and 30 people on a great night working out material in the attic of a bar near UCLA.
Yeah.
Mondays and
That's
Thursdays.
No, I remember it very well. In fact, we were just discussing it on Adam's MMA Roasted podcast about how Godfrey, who now has the new special coming up on Netflix, one night we went outside. We just let me and I think Ben Morrison went outside to smoke a joint, and then we were going to come back in. We go out, we smoke a joint, we come back 5 minutes later, and it's a melee going on in the room, and Godfrey has gotten into a fist fight with the crowd.
There were a few fights in that room. I had a fight in that room once. There were fights in that room.
There were quite a few engagements with the crowd
Yes.
On that level. And the amazing thing was, once it all gets settled down, Adam would just get the show going again.
Yeah.
You know, he would go back downstairs and be like, "Okay, guys, it's all put out. We're starting the show back up. Come on back upstairs." You can't knock the hustle, that's for sure.
One time a fight broke out. You remember the old Lucky Strike room that Laura Valdivia ran? And a fight broke out it was in a bowling alley in Hollywood, and there would be a thick black curtain separating this little performance space so you wouldn't hear much noise from the alley. And literally 2 dudes just broke under the curtain and were fist fighting each other during my set. And because I'm a Crowdwork guy, I just started doing play-by-play of the fight, and I was crushing. These guys are beating the shit out of each other, and I'm announcing their fight. It was so much fun.
Can I tell you, I had a very similar moment. I was at the Stir Crazy Comedy Club in Phoenix, and a fight broke out in the crowd. And I honestly, at first I'm trying to diffuse it. Then I'm like, should I leave the stage or should I? And then, so I was like trying to calm it down. And I spent most of my time trying to get everybody to calm it down and also to get security in the room to handle this situation. And then once it kind of was simmering down, then I just picked it back up and started doing all the crowd work about it. And I think I riffed on it for, I guess, about 30 minutes. Just talking about it, recapping the show and the whole thing. And the riffing went on forever because it became this incredible thing, this experience we'd all shared, that I then had plenty to riff about. And it turned into an unbelievable. I actually have it up on my YouTube. If you go to Greg Romero Wilson on YouTube, you'll see it. It's a fight breaks out in the crowd, and then I riff about it for 45 minutes.
That is incredible. That is incredible, dude. It's amazing how our careers, like, we get to turn shit into funny, amazing, memorable communal experiences. Like, those are some of the highs. Like, it's a weird career when a fight breaking out leads to one of your favorite stories.
It really is. It is. It's very unusual, but that is the life that this is. And that's what makes it a life in the circus. That's what makes it so wacky. This isn't like a day job where every day is the same. And, it is, every day is different. Yep. That is for sure.
Oh, you want to hear one of the lows I just thought of?
Yes, please.
A very annoying low. You just often don't get respected in this business like you want. That's one of the big struggles I totally get.
Biggest struggles for everybody.
Rodney Dangerfield, I get no respect. I mean, that's in our brain at all times. Like, I get no fucking respect. So I created Comedy Juice, which was college night at the Laugh Factory back in the day, and we were packing it in there. We were packing it in there when it was never packed before. I mean, nobody was attending. Jamie Masada asked me to start doing a show there on Tuesdays because there was no one. There was like 4 people there on Tuesdays. And so we all of a sudden on a bad week would have 40, 50 people, but often 100, 150, 200.
Yeah, absolutely.
We did special and legendary lineups of all the people that became the biggest comics in the world. And we did a special Halloween show one time. We packed 320 people, sold out to the rafters. It was on a Thursday. It was on Halloween. We created a whole special show. We were making them bank. I was splitting $75 a week with my partner, Scott Richardson, my producing partner. And we're making them thousands and thousands of dollars. Crazy lineup, packed to the rafters. And I had live sketches and weird shit we had created, cool experiences for the audience. And so at one point, literally we had a whole sketch where there was a heckler that kept heckling me. And I got really angry at him because I was in costume. I was dressed like Dr. Phil. This is like 2005, 2004. and I keep getting heckled, and this guy hates Dr. Phil, and I'm yelling at him, and then all of a sudden he heckles me again, and I pull out a gun and shoot him to death. And he just literally has blood, and he's like blood and lying on the floor. I'm trying to create scary shit for Halloween. And then I'd shoot a guy to death mid-set. The audience is like, and I'm like, anyway, so supermarkets are ridiculous, right? Because, and I go into this stupid bit, and then like 2 minutes later, he comes back to life like in every horror movie and starts charging his stage. Ah! And I pull out the gun again and blow him away out the door onto Sunset Boulevard. Cool theatrical fucking thing. In doing that, really added to the drama, he accidentally knocks into a server with a tray of like 7 drinks. Knocks over.
Right.
And there was this guy at the club that ran the club at the time named Yechiel, who was just like a negative force and was often tried to like ruin your mojo at the worst moments. Right. I get off stage, this incredible moment, we rock this crowd, we entertain this theatrical thing, and I come off stage, and he'd already been harassing me for like months and months and months. I get off stage, only thing he says is, "You're paying for those drinks." I'm getting $35 a week, I'm making them thousands, a mistake happened.
Tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands. And he's like, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, that's like $90. I'm going to be negative 60 in the hole for this week. And I'm like, no, I'm not paying for those drinks. I lost my fucking mind. I'm like, no, I'm not paying for those drinks. He's like, you are. I'm like, I'm fucking not. And I lost it, and I punched the wall in the Laugh Factory. Do you remember there was a hole next to the sound booth, the original sound booth for a long time? I fucking did that. I think I vaguely
remember seeing it.
Yeah, I think there was already a little hole there, and I kind of punched an existing hole and made it a little bit worse.
Either way,
regardless,
you punched the hole there.
I lost my fucking mind, and Bobby Lee and Mitch Mulaney like pulled me out of that door towards down the hall, the alleyway into the back bar, and Mitch Mulaney bought me a drink and calmed me down, and I'd lost it. And I have a photo we took moments later of me as Dr. Phil looking stressed the fuck out with the late Mitch Mulaney and Bobby Lee at the back bar of the Laugh Factory from like 2004 from that moment.
Oh my God. If you could send me that photo, if you have it, if you could send it, I would love to use it. If you could find it, that would be fantastic to use as the cover image for this particular interview.
Sure.
Because that's an incredible story. And that is what this is made of, is a lot of moments like that. For the highs that we have, they're the weird fucking they're mind fucker moments. You're like, what the fuck is happening right now? Am I in crazy town?
Yeah, it's crazy town. It's a crazy business full of weird egos and a lot of people that don't get it and don't know what you bring to the table and underappreciate you. And I've got very lucky that didn't ruin my career losing it like that. And, you know, I didn't hit anybody. I just took out my frustration on a fucking wall. But I'm lucky that didn't reflect, you know, it didn't go beyond that. And I think the guy realized he was being a fucking asshole, and it was never spoken of again. But it's a real tense, energetic, it's an energy roller coaster, this career.
Yeah.
And that's the point I was trying to make earlier, is that even when you get big breaks, yes, you maybe have a little bit of money to pay your bills. Even when you have your own show, you don't often make enough to really float comfortably above your bills. But it's always, it's a career with no job security. Ever. Yeah. You never have job security, even when you have a show, even when you're, you know, so if you're willing to lead a life that's artistically very fulfilling and it's fun and it's wild and crazy, you have to also be willing to lead a life that doesn't give you any
security.
Stability. No stability, no security. You know, one of the craziest anecdotes I ever heard to that end, you think Eddie Murphy has one of the great, big, huge careers of all time. Neil Brennan told me a story once. He was talking to Eddie one time in a trailer on one of his movies, and Neil says to Eddie, "When did you finally feel like you could relax, feel like you'd made it? Was it after SNL? Was it after Beverly Hills Cop 1? Eddie Murphy looks at him and goes, "Nutty Professor 2.
Whoa.
After like 12 major of the biggest grossing movies of all time.
Totally. I would say probably more than that, probably 20.
Yeah.
You know, like that is very deep into his career. Movie career.
The first time he felt like, I'll probably be okay in this business.
Jeez.
Unreal. It's wild, dude. It's a wild It's a wild, mad ride, my friend, you know?
There you go. There you go. What would you say if there was a turning point that you're like, okay, I'm in this. Which of the things that you've done, what do you think was the turning point? If you could pick one,
This podcast appearance, for sure.
obviously, clearly.
If I could pick one, it was when I got my own show. It was when I got Idiot Test.
That was the one.
That was the one. I mean, but really, not just getting it as the host before it hit the air. It was really probably when Idiot Test Season 2 got picked up.
Right.
Because
then you were like, okay, now we're going.
Yeah, now we're going. I'm now established as a person who can helm a show, I'm the only talent on camera on that show. So I'm leading this.
You're the show.
I'm the show. You know, it's otherwise just regular people that aren't funny without me making them funny.
And honestly, you made the show. To me, that show comes and goes without you.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I mean, that's where your crowd work is a blessing and comes in real strong. Like there are only 11 tests on each episode. Half of every episode is me doing crowd work. It's me improvising.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I say that, because I would watch the show going, this show's nothing without Gleib. You are the show. Your riffs. And I felt like people weren't giving you enough credit for how off the cuff funny you were being.
Thank you.
You were really, I thought it was virtuoso performance every episode.
Thank you.
And that's the truth. That's the honest truth.
Thank you so much. So that means the world to hear you say, and equal parts, as you say, it frustrates me at like the missed opportunity in this business. So that's what I mean. Like, yes, that was the moment where I felt like I've proven I can create a show. It can be a hit show. It can get ratings. We get picked up for a second season. I'm still the host. Then became head writer. I was head writer for season 1, but I then became executive producer, all these things. But even that, I then do 4 seasons of it, 210 episodes. I was literally the face of the network. For a long time, it was Rebecca Romaine, and then she and I kind of shared that, and then her show didn't get renewed, and mine did. I outlasted her show, Skin Wars, and all of a sudden, I'm the face of like the Christmas commercials. It's holidays filled with Gleib, and I've got carolers singing my name, and I've got...
This is Gameshow Network we're talking about.
Gameshow Network. I'm the star of the network. It's just, it is what it was at this point, of a whole TV network. And I did what you so generously called virtuoso performances, but I do agree at least they were very good. And just because I was improvising a show, and other than Steve Harvey, who also would like make so much comedy out of nothing on Family Feud, who was also on Gameshow Network, but it was in reruns on Gameshow Network, or second run, it was syndicated on Gameshow Network. I was the only original that was the ratings leader. By the way, do you have maracas in your pocket?
No, I think my wife is messing with something in the background. Sorry about that.
No problem. Every time, and so I do that, and not that you can ever like expect like an Emmy nomination or something, but our show was nominated for our lighting design or our stage design, and I never get nominated, and it's like, and all respect to the great hosts, but every year the game show hosts nominees in this business. Give an example of how lazy the industry is. It's, I mean, rest his soul, but it was every year Alex Trebek, Pat Sajak, and they were amazing. But Pat Sajak, what is he doing that's innovative on Wheel of Fortune?
Yeah, exactly.
He's saying yes or no to letters, and he interviews them for 4 seconds. Yup, that's there. Yup, that's not there. Where are you from? Well, great to have you. That's all he does. How does that year in, year out get nominated as the best game show host when I was playing characters and voices and improvising and creating storylines with contestants that wove throughout whole episodes.
Oh yeah, callbacks. You had it all.
I was doing weird things you've never seen in a game show, and to not only never get nominated, but far worse than that, for that to end, and my agents at the time to not get me a meeting to host another show when that show ended. Or during the 4-year run of the show, I negotiated that I could do any other show in first position above it. And they never got me an audition to host another show. Afterwards, my agents and managers never got me a meeting to host another show, never an opportunity. How do they not parlay that? What more can you offer up to them? I've now done all I possibly could. 210 episodes of this. Show them any one episode and they'll see what I can do. And for that not to lead to another show afterwards and me trying to figure out how to make money again the next year and not having gigs booked, and then I create an event called the Telethon for America the year after Idiot Test ends, an innovative, never before been done event to help drive historic voter turnout in our country for the 2018 midterms. We did it again in 2020 now during quarantine.
I remember, yeah.
I host it with Olivia Munn. We book 95 of the biggest stars on planet Earth. Jane Fonda, Charlize Theron, Natalie Portman, Amy Schumer, Chelsea Handler, everybody there with us in our phone bank. I'm interacting with these stars. I head wrote it, created it, EP'd it. 1 week after the show ends, I get dropped by my agents at William Morris Endeavor. Dropped.
Wow.
Not only do they not parlay it into something positive, but they're like, we don't know what to do with this.
Exactly. Oh, man.
He's going to get pissed at us for not doing stuff. Drop him now. And I'm suddenly representative less after 210 episodes, which came after 100 episodes of Chelsea Lately, and after the Telethon for America. And I still don't have an agent right now that can take my shit to the next level.
It's unfathomable. And what's amazing, it's one of the earliest lessons I learned. I forgot, I was working in corporate entertainment production, and I remember this guy, he produced corporate entertainment. One of the first things he told me, he goes, the one thing, because he knew I wanted to be a comedian, he knew I wanted to be an actor, he goes, the one thing I can tell you is this, just remember, agents are order takers. You're the product, and either you're selling or you're not, but they aren't out there trying to create for you. 100%. They're just sitting there waiting for the phone to ring to take that order for you. That's what they 100%. Are. They're order takers, not salesmen. And 100%. You got to know that going into it. And I was like, and you really don't realize what that means until you see it in a story like yours in action.
Yeah, and sometimes they even work against you. They'll push another client.
Well, that's the worst.
That's yours. I mean, so it's a wild business, and it's very frustrating, and you just have to be willing to persevere through all of that. You know, I've done.
But I will say this, though. You do have, and this is one of the questions I wanted to talk about, you do have one of the legendary comedy managers in Barry Katz. This guy, he is one of those guys that is known, you know, like Shapiro was known as one of the legendary, it's Barry Katz is known as a legendary comedy manager. How did that relationship happen? Was it a goal achieved for you when it happened? Was it, and just lead us through that process. How did that happen?
Barry and I have a wild story. He's still my manager to this day. I love him to pieces. He's been involved in my career since the beginning.
Really?
But not managing me at first. When I had my college talk show I mentioned, the Gleib Show, my freshman year of college, I was 18 years old, and I was just very ambitious. And so for my live Gleib Show at the end of the year, I wanted to book a big Hollywood guest, and I was just cold calling Hollywood agents and managers, trying to convince them to have their client drive up to San Diego.
Wow.
And do my college show. And I somehow got Barry Katz's phone number, and I called him, and he was in his New York offices at the time, and he was so kind to me, and he said he would try to help me find a guest, and he would get on the phone with me at like 10 p.m. New York time from his offices working late nights and give me advice as a freshman in college, what to do with the show, how to book people, put me in touch with Barry Sobel, who then was going to do the show, and I met with Barry in L.A. for coffee, and then Barry didn't do the show because he was booked as a sidekick on the Magic Johnson talk show, The Magic Hour. And then I had to find somebody else.
Tough competition.
Yes, it was. And then I went and met Barry that summer and showed him the show, and he was impressed with it, and he's like, "You're very comfortable in your own skin. It's incredible how you do that. I can try to help you get somebody next year, you understand? I mean, because you're moving the needle even as a college student, and it's pretty wonderful."
Wow.
But then there's ups and downs. I mean, I tell this whole story on Barry's podcast, Industry Standard, which is one of my favorite interviews because we go through like so much of my life and career, as we are now as well too on yours. But then I asked for a meeting with him years later. I sold my talk show I had in college to the National Lampoon Network, and I was doing it for colleges across the country, and it was the #1 show on their network. And I brought a tape of it to Barry's office, and I gave him a VHS tape. Scott and I sat down with him, and I'm like, watch this 45 minutes of stuff. Too much to tell him to watch, tell anybody to watch. And we're like, we wanted to sell this to a TV network. And Barry looks at me and he goes, Gleib, what's incredible about you is you never stop trying. You never stop climbing. You're always working. So I promise you this. I'm going to look at this videotape. And if there's anything remotely I like in this tape, I will help you sell this show. And never heard from him again. And Barry left my life for a few years. And then randomly, a few years, had another manager I got, ended up selling the show to Fox. Lorne Michaels was the executive producer of the Gleib Show, the first time he ever worked for a major network off of NBC, and we developed the show, sold a put pilot, was supposed to make the pilot, got paid to write the script, and then during the 9-month development process, the comedy department got fired at Fox, and the new people came in. As often happens, they clear the slate, and our biggest opportunity in my life disappeared. That was a low when I was writing that script. My father had cancer at the time. Thank God he survived and came out the other end. But we had a script deadline, and my dad is sick, and crying tears, trying to figure out how I can focus on writing a funny script when my father is sick and all this. And then they pass on the show after this journey to get it made, and the biggest opportunity in my life disappeared. And then for years, I kind of lost my motivation to lead my own stuff for years after that and I just wanted my career to be led. My mom had always said, sometimes you lead life and sometimes life leads you. And I decided I was done leading my own life for a while. I wanted just to be pulled with my talent wherever opportunities came. I was going to stop creating my opportunities for years until Kevin Smith came into my life and kind of got me out of that and gave me some opportunities that put me back at the driver's seat of some things. But with my podcast Last Week on Earth that he offered me to do on his network that I still do to this day now, 10 years later, and that show went away and all this, and then I ended up being represented by New Wave Entertainment,
right,
with Brian Volkweis, who wanted to
which was originally Barry's company, right?
Yeah, he started it with Brian Volkweis, and just through that, I ended up working mostly with Brian and this woman named Anna Babbitt, but Barry also kind of was dealing with my stuff again now and overseeing my stuff occasionally. And then he and I started working more closely together, and I was working less with Brian, and then shit went down there, and they parted ways, and Barry left that company and started Barry Katz Entertainment again, his own company. And I was still, for a minute, it was like right around that same time, then suddenly I'm dropped by New Wave. I get dropped one day. We've all been dropped a million times by our reps here and there. It just happens, part of this business. It's always a low moment too. And I was dropped out of the fucking blue by my managers there because of something that had nothing to do with me. It was because I was working with Dane Cook on some projects, and something that Dane said reflected on me, and my managers didn't want to work with him anymore, and then also didn't want to work with me for the same reason. And I got dropped by proxy. And I had no agent at the time. I didn't know what to fucking do. I was a man without a ship, and I called Barry instantly. And Barry Katz said to me, then I want you to know that I will always represent you if you need representation. Until the day you fire me, I will be your manager. Don't you worry. I will take care of you. And my lowest low only hit me for those 20 minutes till he said that. And he's like, and it was like Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish holiday. He said, I never invite clients to my house, but please come to my house tonight and join my family. It was for Passover Seder, and I want you to know that you're loved here. And he saved me, and I went with him, and he's been representing me ever since and he got me my Showtime special and all of that stuff, and he's been with me ever since. I've been with him ever since. And so that's the nice
That's a great impression of him. Can I tell you, I like his podcast, Industry Standard. When people ask me, what can I was like, listen to Industry Standard. He really, if you want to know about the business of show business, you need to listen to Industry Standard. The problem with the show is Barry Katz. He's so hard to listen to, especially when he does his promos. It's just like, oh, you're killing my ears, Barry. Like, more them, less you, Barry, please. There's a reason you're the manager and not the talent, because I have this water filter on my counter. It costs $300 normally, but if you use Barry Katz H2O, I'm just like, Barry, you killing me.
Do you have cankles? If you have cankles, you can try new Barry Katz ankle weights that will help you
I gotta tell you,
lose your cankles.
I wish everyone knew him better, because that is the best impression you've done so far on this podcast. Your Barry Katz is dead on, man.
Thank you. I opened his podcast with me as him.
Oh, that's great. I'm gonna have to go back and find that episode now and listen to it.
I've done it twice. The first one's the better one.
Let's get into your writing process, because again, people think of you as a crowd work guy, and I want to talk about your thought process when you do crowd work too. But I want to talk about your writing process when it comes to material. What's your process like? Are you riff based? Do you write a lot, pare it down? Do you wait for inspiration? Do you force inspiration? What is your process when it comes to writing new material?
I'm mostly a wait for inspiration guy. I promised myself when I was 18 that the least I could do to write my material, if I was dedicated to being a comedian, was to, whenever I have a funny thought, write it down. That could be stand-up or something. Write it down right then.
Right then. It's lightning in the bottle.
Yeah, exactly. It'll never be as pure. It'll never be as funny. The way you said it that made your friends laugh, write those exact fucking words down right now. And so I've got thousands of files in my Evernote of jokes that I'll never get to, all of them. Yeah. And that's really my writing process. Then I go through my notes, and I'm pretty lazy at I don't have a very good work ethic with that. And thank God I'm good at improv. Before a set, when I want to try a bunch of new stuff, literally maybe 10 or 15 minutes before I'm on stage, already at the club, I'll just go through my notes, reread, the most recent 20 or 30 jokes. But I want to try that one, write down like a 2-word cue on a set list of what that joke will be, and I'll do, out of a 15-minute set, 13 minutes of all new stuff, and record the audio.
So you are kind of riff-based that way, in that you take the note and then you go up there and you riff it out.
Yes, but I do try to say it initially pretty close to how I wrote it. I'll definitely add a few words, but I don't add that much riff to it. I really say how I had it written. And of course, in the moment, I'll add little flourishes, but I pretty much try to say it the way it does. And then I play back, if I'm being efficient that day, on the way home from the club. I'll play in the car the tape, and your brain just remembers, oh, yep, that line does not work. How can I tweak that? Maybe if I said I need to maybe backload the punchline of that sentence. Let me rephrase that. I got to drop this joke entirely. Maybe if I shorten that, I didn't set up enough this premise. I can tell that's why that didn't hit. And you just adjust. And then for the next, few weeks and months, I'll just take the ones that are hitting the best and tweak them so they're stronger and stronger, and remember the taglines I've added, remember the extra punches, and make sure that I keep expanding and memorizing the bits properly, and then the worst ones, just drop them out and forget about them. And that's really my process. But if there's times when I have to write under a deadline, or I have to write a bunch of stuff at once, or I just want to sit down to write, which I don't often do, I smoke a little weed, and instantly it kicks me into high gear. I won't think of a joke sometimes for a week, and I'll smoke a little weed, and I'll write for the next 2 hours, and I'll have 20 notebook pages full of stuff.
Yeah.
That's really how I write when I sit
Well, and that's a very honest approach to the process. For some people, weed slows them down. For some people, weed amps them up. You kind of do have to find your process, and if that's what does it for you, then that's an amazing, honest take on that process. Now, when you do crowd work, take us through your thought process, what you see, what you're looking for, what sparks it, and then how you translate it, how it goes from the intake to the output.
Sure. So I don't think I put too much thought into it. I just try to stay as in the moment and listen as well as possible, and be as organically connected as possible. But if any thought enters my head when I pick somebody to speak to, I just try to find somebody who in some way has a spark in their eye, looks weird or unique or confident or not confident, just something that I think is going to lead to a weird answer or something that I can pull or tweak or make fun of. So I just try to avoid the super boring looking people who are just like this.
Right. They're giving you nothing.
Nothing. I call on somebody who has either dressed a little weird or looks like this, like,
Right.
or if they're like,
yeah,
way, just something.
They're giving you something you can grab onto, like a thread that you can just start unraveling it with. Yes. Now, when you do crowd work, I consider, the way I teach crowd work is a very safe version of crowd work that's meant for developing comics to learn to do crowd work and create punchlines in the moment and not turn into just being an asshole up there. Mm-hmm. That is kind of the methodology I teach, because I think that's the best way to get started with it. What you do, I consider the far more advanced method. I tell them not to do it, which is getting information from them, because you're letting them talk. And if you don't know how to manage that moment, it can overwhelm you real fast, because once you get them talking, you've created this impetus to where if you don't create anything with it, you just lost the crowd work war. You've created it. And so it definitely is a much more dangerous approach that experienced crowd workers are masters of it. You're a master of this. But I tell young comics, no, that isn't where you want to start. You want to start with this, a simple referencing situation, create the punchline, get the fuck out of there. Don't let them talk, because you're going to put yourself in a situation. You get the information, you get them to give you a little something, don't you?
Yes, I do, 100%. Because to me, I don't like generic crowd work at all, and I get teaching the skill. But to me, there's nothing worse or more boring than watching comics do basic-ass generic crowd work that's just like people doing the same joke. Because if you don't, to me, the brilliance, the beauty of crowd work is in the second question. So it's the opposite, like you said, but everybody has the same answer on the first question. There's a very limited number of what do you do. That's generally, I only ask generally two questions when I do crowd work, is what is it that you do, and what do you do for hobbies or passions you pursue on the side? That's all I ever really ask. You'd think, but in 20 years of doing this, I've almost never had to repeat a joke that I think of in crowd work, because I ask that second question. So everybody's going to be like, doctor, lawyer, teacher, engineer. I work at a oil sands thing. I work at a plant. My hobbies are hunting, fishing, kayaking, da-da-da. Great. But the second question is where people become diverse as hell and verge away into a whole different world of possibilities. Millions of different lives are out there in that second question. Oh, you hunt. Are you good at it? What kind of hunting do you do? Who do you hunt with? And all of a sudden, the second piece of information that they offer is always the fascinating information, which is why, in my opinion, like as an interviewer, Jay Leno was the worst. He never asked a follow-up question. People have a wall... People who's like, okay, sure. People are like, wanted him to. They're like, well, it was a very controversial time in my life, Jay. Okay, great. And your next project? No. That's the follow-up is tell us about it. What was controversial? So everything's in the follow-up. So when you ask a follow-up question, that's when people just don't want. They want a little bit of veneer of mystery. So they'll just be like, oh, I'm a doctor. But what's it like being a doctor? Okay, let me tell you.
Right.
People just want to put up a wall. People's walls are very easy to break down. That's why walls are ineffective politically as well. They just want to have a wall initially. And if
we work that little in there.
Yeah.
Little wall dig. I like it.
That's right. And after one question, people break down and are fucking will tell you everything. And so I asked that second question, and now we're off to the races with weird shit.
Yeah, see, what I try and teach them to do is basically to answer that second question on their own. To look at them and guess at what they think the answer to that second question is and go with that, as opposed to actually getting them talking, which you better be really comfortable with this, if you're going to get them talking, because you
Yes,
still have
for
to control
sure.
the dance.
But why do it if you're not comfortable with it? Is my philosophy is just
Well, you
take
got,
your
you know,
material.
again, everybody wants to do it. And what I'm trying to prevent is them getting, because we've all seen bad crowd work.
Right.
And bad crowd work ruins shows.
Yes.
And a lot of times, what someone like you, an expert, is doing kind of looks to someone who doesn't understand what's happening like you're being a dick.
Right.
And so then what they do is then they just say dicky shit,
Right.
thinking that that's crowd work, and that is not crowd work.
No, there's a very,
and so
very
I'm trying
fine
to give
line.
them, yeah. So I'm trying to give them tools, basically, to prevent that from happening. You know,
I understand that for sure, and there's a very fine line between straight up being a dick and being. I pride myself on walking right up to that line and never crossing it.
yeah.
And
that takes a pro. That isn't first level shit right there.
Thanks, man, for sure. I love it. I love it. But I don't think it's for everybody. And if you're not able to think of creative things that you feel proud of, that you feel like that's not what every crowd work is like, but that's a unique interaction we had, then keep doing it. If you're doing a lot of it and you're just literally making like, you're a doctor, okay, I guess you're going to touch my balls. Like, stop it. Just give up crowd work. Give up crowd work because you don't have the skill. It's a very unique skill. There's lots of comedians that can write a funny set over the course of their lives and careers. Much fewer can improvise uniquely in the moment. And if you're not one of those, just don't keep doing it.
When I first started stand-up, there was this one guy who was so bad. No matter what show we were doing, he would ask someone in the audience, oh, where are you from? And regardless of where they said they were from, didn't matter, Cincinnati, Wichita Falls, New York City, you just go, oh, we're men are men and sheep are scared. Every time. And I'm like, he said he was from New York City. The fuck are you talking about? It drove me bananas. So I know you got to go.
I would just tell him to stop. I would just tell him to stop. So like, yeah, there's nothing.
Well, at this point, this was a comedian that was ahead of me. This was a guy that was like a feature, and I was barely still an open micer at this point.
There's nothing. Well, you can't say shit, but you got to know your place for sure. But there's nothing worse to me. Even at least that was a joke, and that's very annoying, no doubt. But I hate when I see hosts do crowd work and they don't even attempt a joke. That's the worst thing. You see this all the time. You'll be like, how's everybody doing? Great. Hey, what do you do? Oh, you're a doctor? Okay, great. So we're going to have a good show.
Oh, right. That's what I'm saying.
You didn't even try to make a joke. Why are you wasting our fucking time?
And that's why younger comics who don't know what they're doing yet shouldn't, when you get that impetus, you have to do something with it.
Yes.
And so don't ask for it, because when you don't do something with it, then you've just established you're an amateur.
Yeah, you people are sitting there going to be like, I can never put this person. It's just like Ben Gleib early opening the show with crowd work shit. And I still did creative shit, but still it wasn't that good, and they're not going to book you. So no one's seeing, I guarantee you this, you're not coming off stage and a booker's being like, excuse me, when you said to that guy, what does he do? And he answered, and you just said, okay, great. I want you on my show. You are a talent.
We must have this.
The way you heard what he said and acknowledged it. I've never seen something like it. The boldness.
Well, listen, let's just close with this really quickly. I know you got to go. Thank you so much for doing this. This has been an amazing, enlightening, powerful interview for comedians. If you had any piece of advice for up and coming comedians, guys that have just gotten in the river and they're figuring their way out, if there's any last closing words, we'd love to hear them.
Sure. I would recommend that they all listen to my appearance on this podcast.
Undoubtedly.
I would say, I've said it already, but you have to be comfortable with uncertainty. You have to be ready for a long journey, and you have to be dedicated to being as truly unique as possible for the rest of your life. If you think you have it in you to constantly reinvent, to constantly be new and funny and daring and take chances, all while you don't always know where your bills are going to get paid from, and that's the life you truly desire in your heart, because you're a comic in your heart, and that's the only thing that's going to make you happy, then you have a great chance to do it, and you can ride the wave to the future you've dreamed about. If you don't, if that sounds like not you, be honest with yourself and check in after a year and after 2 years. And if it stops being you, choose another career. You can change paths these days very quickly. You can evolve yourself very quickly. Don't get stuck being one of the thousands of comics who never make it and get stuck not having a comfortable, good life. It can remain a hobby. It can remain something you did, and it's a great story, but it doesn't need to be your life unless you're truly very good at it. If people don't recognize you as being great, as being really good, as having the potential to be great, then what are you doing?
Yeah. You got to be honest with yourself. That's true.
It's not a super, inspiring answer, but
no, really, you know what? It's real talk though, and it's what people need to hear.
Yeah.
And for that, I thank you, my man. Thank you so much for your time today. I know you're incredibly busy. Thank you for giving us a little bit of your time, and thank you for giving us a lot of your wisdom. It's much appreciated today, brother.
It is my pleasure so much. And if I can invite your listeners to see what I do if they want, I mentioned it up top, but I do a weekly Crowdwork show and full improv show called Gleib Off the Top, Crowdwork and Improvised Madness at Nowhere Comedy Club on Zoom. And you can get a ticket, and you can be in the audience. You can even be part of the show at certain points, but be and just watch me live with some of the greatest comics as my special guests, or even the solo ones, and watch how we stay in the pocket and enjoy it and just laugh and learn a little bit about what it is. And then I do a monthly show also at Nowhere with Greg Proops, the improv legend from Whose Line Is It Anywhere, called Greg and Gleib, It's a G Thing, and we do improv games Whose Line style. And we'll riff for an hour plus, pretty seamlessly. We'll just make you laugh constantly. You'll get ideas. You'll see some of the techniques we use. You'll learn if you attend regularly. And then on February 26th, I'm doing my next headline of my material at Nowhere, where I'm unleashing a ton of new material in the hour I'm going to bring out on the road when this all ends. And that's also at Nowhere Comedy Club. So just check all that out and come support and come and watch some fun cutting edge shit, because we're doing things online that you never thought you'd be able to do.
No, you really are. You guys really were in the right place to do it. You've done amazing things with it. And I totally agree. If you want to really understand crowd work, see the advanced level of crowd work, check out Ben Gleib, Gleib Off the Top at the Nowhere Comedy Club. Thank you very much, man. Thank you for sharing your genius with us today, man.
You've been a friend for a very long time. I love you, bud.
I love you too, man. You have a wonderful day.
You too.
Take care.